I said, Jimmy, at night I didn't see any sharks. He says, Pete, you don't know what fear is.
Welcome to Watch Mojo, and today we're looking at the scariest recorded shark attacks.
It's a little bit like a nightmare or a fairy tale, but I've told the story many times.
Parker Simpson. Very few people are actually attacked by sharks, and even fewer have video evidence of their attack. Parker Simpson is one of the few. The 23-year-old was spearfishing in the Florida Keys when he encountered an 8-foot-long reef shark underneath the water. Simpson released his fish hoping to appease the hungry shark, but the animal came at him instead. It took a bite out of his left leg before it was successfully fought off, and despite the injury, Simpson was able to swim to a nearby boat.
Justin, get my gun! Get my gun,
He was rushed to a nearby hospital, having lost about 1 liter of blood. The bite had severed his anterior tibial artery and required 56 stitches to close.
Alright, I need the first aid kit from the bathroom.
Heather Boswell. Here we have another shark attack caught on camera, this one concerning 19-year-old Heather Boswell.
Something in me, I knew that
it was going to be you.
It was going to attack me.
Yeah.
Back in 1994, Boswell was working in Chile as a researcher. On their day off, she and the crew decided to go swimming, and that's when tragedy struck. While she was in the water, Boswell was approached by a great white which proceeded to rip off the young researcher's leg.
And then the shark came back and grabbed my other leg. That was the only point I thought I wasn't going to make it.
Boswell remembers no pain, stating that all she felt at the time was a pop. This entire ordeal was caught on video by one of her colleagues and has since surfaced on Shark Week. Luckily, Boswell survived the attack, but the footage is certainly harrowing and not for the faint of heart.
So I figure I'm pretty safe now.
Lucas Ransom. Lucas Ransom was bodyboarding with his friend Matthew Garcia near Santa Barbara, California.
He was just 100 yards from shore and a few feet away from his friend, Matthew Garcia, when without warning, he was pulled under.
As later described by Garcia, the day was perfect, with very placid and calm water. Then seemingly out of nowhere, Ransom was dragged under the water by a shark. Ransom quickly re-emerged, screaming for help, and the water around him instantly turned a deep red.
As it grabbed him, it kind of like pushed me out of the way, and all of a sudden he went from being 2 feet away to being 6 feet away.
Garcia managed to pull Ransom back to the safety of the beach, but it was already too late. Garcia explained that he was just kind of lifeless, and despite Garcia's attempts at chest compressions, Ransom died on the beach from a horrific leg injury.
But we should celebrate his life and celebrate what he meant to everyone around him and how he made everyone just feel amazing all the time.
Terry Manuel. A recorded 13 people were attacked by sharks in South Australian waters between 1951 and 2000. 26-year-old Terry Manuel was one of them. It was 1974 and Manuel was diving for sea snails with his friend John Talbot near Streaky Bay. Manuel saw the shark and shouted a warning to Talbot, who was in a nearby boat. Talbot did what he could to save Manuel, but the shark was too fast and attacked the diver, injuring his arm and back and completely biting off his right leg above the thigh. The injuries were too great to survive, and Manuel quickly bled to death. David Peltier. Sharks don't discriminate between their victims, and sometimes, tragically, that means that young people die. In 2001, young David Peltier was surfing off the coast of Virginia with his father and 2 brothers.
Richard realized his son was now caught up in a cynical tug-of-war with a sea monster.
He was suddenly grabbed by an 8-foot sandbar shark, and his father acted quickly, punching the shark in the head until it freed his son. The shark had inflicted horrible injuries, with one witness claiming that there were shark bites all along his leg. He lost a lot of blood. Lifeguards tended to Peltier on shore, and he was rushed to 3 different hospitals as doctors worked feverishly to save his life.
Little David's life was now being weighed down by each passing second.
Unfortunately, they were unsuccessful. Sam Kellett. Young Sam Kellett worked as a school teacher in Australia and enjoyed diving in his free time.
I knew, and about an hour later the police turned up.
On February 8, 2014, Kellett was free diving with some friends on Goldsmith Beach when he was suddenly accosted by a violent shark. Witnesses recount hearing a brief scream and seeing a large shark shoot out of the water. They then explain that the shark thrashed around as it wrestled with something near the surface, and the water around it quickly turned blood red. It all happened so quickly, and when it was over, Sam Kellett was gone. His body was never recovered, but investigators found his spear gun with clear incisions that had been made by a great white.
He would hate the fact that people are now saying, go get the shark. And as a mother, I'd like to give it a smack, but it's not going to bring him back.
The HMS Birkenhead. We're going back to the mid-19th century for the story of HMS Birkenhead.
She had a top speed of 10 knots, able to make the trip from Britain to the Cape in just 37 days.
Working as a troop ship with the U.S. Navy, HMS Birkenhead served in the 8th Koza War. And on February 26, 1852, she was transporting troops and civilians to Algoa Bay in South Africa. Just before 2 a.m., the ship hit an uncharted rock and split in half, sending all on board into the ocean.
There was a gash in the hull. Seawater rushed in. At least 100 soldiers were immediately drowned, trapped, sleeping in their bunks.
The ship was only 2 miles from the mainland, and some managed to grab debris and float their way to shore. Unfortunately, most either drowned or were taken by sharks. As one survivor recounts, hundreds of them were all around us, and I saw men taken by them. Louis Boren. On Saturday, December 19, 1981, surfer Louis Boren set out for some waves in Monterey Bay, California. He never returned to shore. It wasn't long before a chunk of his surfboard washed ashore in the same vicinity, with massive teeth marks indicating that it had been eaten.
It's missing a huge crescent section from the left side.
Experts theorized from the bite that the shark was up to 23 feet in length, making it the largest white shark ever recorded. It was widely assumed that Boren was the victim of a shark, and this was confirmed when his body washed ashore about half a mile north of the attack site. It had suffered great trauma consistent with a shark attack, and it's likely that Boren died instantly from the bite.
The shark responsible is never captured or identified.
Albert Kogler Jr. College lovers Albert Kogler Jr. and Shirley O'Neill decided to go for a swim in San Francisco's Baker Beach on the afternoon of May 7, 1959.
Albert said they shouldn't go any deeper as it was dangerous.
The two were about 50 yards out and enjoying the scenery, the Golden Gate Bridge sitting nearby, when Kogler was suddenly pounced by a great white. The water instantly turned red, and Kogler told O'Neill to swim away for her own safety. Despite the warning, O'Neill braved the shark and grabbed her boyfriend around the back before dragging him to shore. Unfortunately, the injuries were too significant and Kogler would pass away. As for O'Neill, she was later presented the Young American Medal for Bravery by President John F. Kennedy. Bethany Hamilton. If you've seen the movie Soul Surfer, then you should be familiar with the harrowing but empowering story of Bethany Hamilton.
But you were way out there, right?
Yeah, it's about a quarter of a mile.
Back in 2003, Hamilton was surfing with her best friend Alana Blanchard off the coast of Kauai. She was lying on her surfboard talking to Blanchard with her arms dangling in the water when a tiger shark bit off her left arm.
Did you know you'd lost your arm at that point?
Yeah, right away I knew. And
were you in pain? Were you in pain?
No pain at all.
No pain at all.
She was rushed to a nearby hospital and in one of those divine twists of fate, took her own father's spot in the operating room, as he was scheduled to have knee surgery that very same day. Despite losing 60% of her blood, Hamilton made a swift recovery and returned to surfing just 1 month later.
It's amazing to see how an obstacle can turn your life upside down, but turn into something totally awesome.
Pacific coast of USA. There must have been something in the Pacific water in 1984, because 4 shark attacks occurred near Santa Cruz, California that year.
A great white shark circling a kayaker. That's near Santa Cruz. And that's not the only shark lurking in the water right now.
Of these 4 unlucky victims, 28-year-old Omar Conger received the most media attention, as tragically he did not survive. Conger was able to escape from the shark and was dragged to shore by his friends, but the damage had already been done. Despite their efforts, he bled out and died on the beach.
The San Mateo County coroner would later confirm that the cause of death was exsanguination as a result of multiple shark bites.
Luckily, the severity of the other 3 attacks proved relatively minor by comparison. Nonetheless, that particular year has since gone down as a notoriously dangerous one for swimmers in the Santa Cruz area. Singapore. As the passengers aboard the French steamer La Seine found out the hard way back in 1909, it's not the water itself that you have to fear when a ship goes down, but what swims beneath its surface.
Suddenly, the calm of the night on the ship was broken by a loud blast of the ship's whistle, and the chief officer jumped up and rushed to the deck to find out what had happened.
Traveling from Java to Singapore, La Seine met catastrophe in the Rio Strait when it crashed into a British steamer while still 28 miles from shore. The passengers hardly had time to react as the ship went down in less than 5 minutes, sending all on board into the shark-infested waters.
The first of the passengers had scarcely touched the water before a shoal of sharks was circling the scene and dragging down scores of men and women who never came up again.
Of the 154 individuals on La Seine, papers at the time estimated that 93 had drowned or been eaten alive. Barry Wilson, the first recorded shark attack victim in California. Barry Wilson was just a teenager when his life was tragically cut short by a shark near Lover's Point in Pacific Grove.
You think we may have another shark problem?
Wilson was swimming with his friend about 40 feet from shore when he was attacked in December 1952. The brutal attack left Wilson badly injured, and the rough water only increased the difficulty of his rescue. During the 20-plus minute rescue effort by swimmers, the shark reportedly continued to circle them, though it didn't attack anyone other than Wilson. The young man was eventually pulled back to land, but he'd already died from his injuries. Randall Fry. We remain in California for another brutal and sadly fatal attack.
It was a sunny Sunday afternoon, and the sea was calm and breathing with cadence.
Randall Fry, an avid lover of all ocean activities, and his friend Cliff Zimmerman were diving for abalone off the Mendocino coast back in 2004. Zimmerman reported hearing a loud whooshing sound before seeing the fin of the shark while the water turned red around him. Zimmerman was able to safely return to his boat, but Fry was not so lucky.
Cliff remembered that during one of their usual bunters, Randy had mentioned that a shark might get him in the future.
The next day, a search and rescue team found his head severed from his body. Robert Pamperin. Another outing in the waters of California, another case of diving for sea snails, and another shark attack.
When he got over, he saw his buddy in the shark's mouth. The shark seemed to have him up to his waist.
Who would have thought abalone diving would be so dangerous? Pamperin and his friend Gerald Lehrer were diving off the coast of San Diego back in 1959 when Pamperin let out a loud scream before disappearing beneath the water.
Robert Pamperin is still trying to fight the shark off. He's kicking at it, and the shark keeps biting at him.
Lehrer dove after him and reported seeing a shark that was longer than 22 feet with Pamperin stuck squarely in his mouth. Lehrer swam to shore to alert the lifeguards, but they were unable to find any trace of Pamperin, who was likely completely devoured by the shark. Ian Redman. What started out as a romantic vacation quickly turned into tragedy.
It was supposed to be the dream holiday to launch their life together.
On his honeymoon off Anse Lazio Beach in Seychelles, Redmond was out snorkeling when he was set upon by a shark. A vacationer in a small boat was able to pull Redmond to shore, but the shark had already taken his arm and leg.
But he was already so badly mauled by the shark that he died soon after.
Redmond bled to death on the beach while his wife of just 10 days watched. There had been a shark attack in the same exact location 2 weeks earlier, but the Seychelles tourism chief had elected not to close the beaches or even warn the public in order to keep attracting tourists. Rodney Fox. You'd think that a punctured diaphragm, a ripped lung, and pierced scapula would be enough to kill a man, but not Rodney Fox.
It knocked the gun out of my hand, the mask off my face, and I was hurled through the water.
In 1963, Fox was defending his spearfishing title when a great white shark grabbed him by his torso. Fox put up a good fight, including gouging the shark's eyes, and was eventually able to escape.
A boat came over to have a look what all the bright red water was.
He required multiple hours of extensive surgery and over 460 stitches, but lived to tell the tale. He has since become an expert on great white sharks and even helped design the first ever underwater shark observation cage. Jersey Shore. Before the fake tans, hairspray, and fist pumps, the Jersey Shore is perhaps most famous for one of the worst series of shark attacks in history back in the early 20th century.
He swims out a ways, not too far, 50 feet or so.
Between July 1st and July 12, 1916, 4 people were killed by shark attacks, with a 5th person managing to escape but suffering severe injuries.
Back in 1916, they simply weren't thought of as killers.
Panic ensued, capturing the attention of the nation, as locals began an effort to eliminate them from the region, referring to them as man-eaters. It's these attacks that unfortunately gave sharks their rep as ruthless killers, a reputation they still have today despite scientific discoveries that have proven otherwise.
Recent research has shown that sharks can use the angle of the sun in order to give them a predatory advantage.
Shirley Ann Durden. Australia has a somewhat unfair reputation when it comes to shark attacks.
On Sunday, March 3rd, 1985, Shirley Ann Durden, 33 years old, her and her husband Barry, along with a friend Keith Coventry, ended up going to Wiseman's Beach, which is in South Australia.
Sure, they happen from time to time, but not quite to the extent many seem to believe. And again, when you hear about attacks like this in the land down under, it's hard not to let your imagination run wild.
The water is clear. It's a nice day. There are no issues with visibility in the water.
Durden, a mother of 4, was snorkeling in just 7 feet of water when she was attacked by a great white shark in 1985. Her husband and children were within view but could only watch helplessly as Durden was ripped in two.
Well, Barry wanted to get over there to try to help her, but Keith had noticed that, that first bite had did so much damage, there's nothing they're going to be able to do for her.
The shark, which some estimated to be between 14 and 19 feet in length, reportedly claimed all her bodily remains. Before we continue, Be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. You have the option to be notified for occasional videos or all of them. If you're on your phone, make sure you go into your settings and switch on notifications. USS Indianapolis. The United States Navy had never suffered a single loss of life at sea as great as the sinking of the USS Indianapolis, and sharks played a large role in this.
What do we do, sir? What do we do, sir? Well, you know, being an officer, I didn't know what to do, really.
The ship was delivering parts for the first atomic bomb used in combat, which would later be dropped on Japan. On its return, however, it was hit by Japanese torpedoes and sank in 12 minutes.
First torpedo cut the bow of the ship off. Immediately I knew that the ship was doomed because I could hear all the bulkheads breaking below.
About 900 men were sent into the shark-infested waters of the Pacific Ocean, while the remaining 300 or so went down with the ship. When rescuers finally arrived, the sharks had eaten much of the crew.
Basically, anybody who actually got in the way of a shark is gone.
Only 317 people survived the disaster, many of whom told chilling tales of hearing blood-curdling screams in the middle of the night as sharks attacked their fellow sailors. Do you have any shark stories? Let us know in the comments below.
We had one great big shark. Somebody named him Charlie.